Hey, gorgeous! Welcome to the Business Mindset Podcast with Holly Wharton, which combines powerful strategies on how to upgrade your business mindset, along with practical business tips to grow your business. This podcast features solo shows with Holly and also interviews with inspiring women entrepreneurs from around the world. Thank you so much for joining us today. And now, here's your host, Holly Wharton.
Hello and welcome to the Business Mindset Podcast, episode 168. This is your host, Holly Wharton, and I'm here with today's special co-host, Joe Casey. We're back together for another co-hosted episode. So this week we're going to be talking about how to think bigger and surround yourself with the right people in your business. And I'm really, really excited about this episode because I think it's a really great companion and follow-on from our previous co-hosted episode, which is about coaching, mentoring, and masterminding, and how to know which is right for you and when. So today we're going to talk about, as I said, surrounding yourself with the right people. And there are so many different ways to do that, and we talk about all those different ways. In this episode, we talk about what's worked for us, what's not worked for us, to kind of give you an idea of which ways of creating communities or joining communities works for you. So you can do one-to-one stuff, you can do group stuff, you can do in-person, like offline stuff, you can do online stuff. The whole point of all of this is to surround yourself with people who are going to be supportive and to lift you up and help you build your business and keep you away from the naysayers and the people who say you're never going to amount to anything, you're never going to be able to build a business. So we're going to talk about how to find what suits you, what are your preferences for surrounding yourself with the right people, all the different options, what are they? How to know when to upgrade the people in your life and your connections, and that sounds awful, but if you're the kind of person who's into personal development, and I'm going to assume you are since you're listening to this podcast, I'm sure there's been a point in your life where you felt like you've outgrown a group of people or a networking group or someone in your life. That's not a bad thing. Different people grow at different rates, and that's perfectly fine. So sometimes we feel that it's time for us to move on and find a new group of connections, and that's absolutely fine. So we talk a little bit about how to know when to make that happen. We're also going to share in the show notes some links to our own Facebook groups, some of our favorite Facebook groups if you like that kind of networking, and loads of super useful stuff. So hope you enjoy this episode. It's a little bit longer than usual. I think we go about 40 minutes or so, but it's because we packed it so full of really useful information. So that is all for now. I hope you enjoy the episode, and I will see you at the end. Hello and welcome back. This is another joint co-hosted episode between Joe Casey and Holly Wharton. And today we're going to talk a little bit about thinking bigger in business and surrounding yourself with the right people, both in business and life. So, hey Joe, how are you?
Hey Holly, I'm great. I'm really good, and I'm excited to talk about this because it's a game changer, I think.
I think it is, and I think it's a great follow-on from our last episode, which is all about business mentoring, coaching, and masterminding. What do you need and when?
Mm-hmm. For sure, yes.
So let's talk a little bit about what is this whole thinking bigger thing? Like, why do people need to think bigger than where they are right now?
Well, I think that you only really truly believe a certain level is possible for you based on your own experience or what you can see around you. And one of the biggest gifts that you can give to yourself, and I'd argue that we give to our clients as well, as coaches, is helping us to see more possibilities and, I suppose, a bigger game, for want of a better word. So, for example, it was really hard for me to imagine that it was even possible to earn a living as a coach until I met some people who did just that. It was really difficult for me to believe that it was genuinely possible to earn the magical 6 figures as a coach until I met people who were doing just that and weren't horrible, sleazy, cheesy, push the pain kind of marketing people. So I think having people around you who not only believe in you, it helps to create a new normal.
Yes.
This is possible. This is not only possible, this is just naturally going to happen because they're doing it. And you start to subconsciously model it, I think.
It's like it bumps your level of possibilities or your ceiling or your options up to a new level. And I hate that take it to the next level kind of
I know
thing,
what you mean.
but it does. It really does kind of open up your mind to the possibilities that exist in a much bigger way.
Yeah, and that really helps to combat some of those limiting beliefs or that desire that we have to keep ourselves safe and keep ourselves protected and not reach too far in case we fall and we fail. It helps to kind of bolster our courage a little bit as well and kind of give us a bit of a route map as to how to get there.
Yeah, definitely. So how do you know if you're surrounding yourself with the right people?
Well, I think there's a couple of things to it. I think there's the people who you almost kind of look to as not necessarily role models in the way that you might idolize somebody, but role models in the way that they're doing what I want to be doing. And so I see them, I can relate to them. I therefore know that it's possible for me. And then there are the people who I suppose more actively help to encourage and support, you know, who pick you up on the days when you're feeling a bit kind of low and it'll never happen, or the disappointments, but who can also be your cheerleaders and help to brainstorm with you and also living in that same space of possibility rather than... I kind of think back to some cultures in workplaces that I've had where there's, you know, there can be a bit of a toxic atmosphere where it almost becomes unacceptable to be optimistic. So it's all like, oh, we tried that in 1984, it didn't work then, didn't work now. Oh yeah, typical of them to say that, isn't it? And that becomes a kind of culture, and that's a self-protection thing. I think... And I understand where that comes from. And there've been times in my life and my career where, you know, I most definitely have fallen into that same kind of mindset and talking about things. But I think when you are stepping out and you're wanting to take a leap and to grow and to develop, you need people who are also there kind of cheering you on and helping you to make that a reality rather than being the ones kind of going, oh, well, that probably won't ever happen. So, or what's the point? You know, who do you know is making six figures? That type of thing. I think it is so important because we can be our own worst enemies, and the stuff that goes on inside our own heads can very often be the most destructive and toxic thoughts.
Exactly. So if you can have like real people, other people who are kind of on the positive end of things, I think that can help lift you up out of your mind crap.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is the technical term for it.
I'm glad to know that, being that you are an expert in all things mindset. I'm feeling educated.
Okay, so as we were talking about before we got started with the recording, there's so many different ways that you can surround yourself with the right people. You can do it online, you can do it offline, you can do one-to-one, you can do groups. What are your personal favorites for surrounding yourself with people who lift you up and, you know, help you be a better person in business?
Well, as an introvert, I would say that most of mine is done virtually. Although I say that as somebody who has like literally walked in the door about 15 minutes before we started recording from an in-person meetup, because I have a meetup group for coaches that takes place once a month. And so I do also recognise that it's really important to have that kind of face-to-face human interaction. I'm really lucky that I have a very supportive husband who has no idea what I do still to this day. I mean, he's an engineer, so he really doesn't get it. But if he ever, you know, if I have a problem with stuff, he now knows more how to be encouraging. He's really good at saying, so this is where the engineering side really comes into it. He sees things much more black and white than I do. So I'm all about the shades of grey. I'm all about the really trying to understand where somebody's coming from. But if ever somebody says something that, you know, triggers me, or I think, oh, maybe, you know, that wasn't the kindest thing to have said, my husband would just come out and say, well, they're an idiot, aren't they? Or, you know, sometimes that could be really refreshing from the whole kind of, you know, coaching mindset of that's obviously their truth. And, you know, people just come out and say it.
It's a reflection of what's going on for them right now.
Yeah. That's just their fear talking and all that. He will just say, no, they're an idiot. And so I'm really lucky to have somebody who is so supportive, but in a very different way. But then I also have, you know, my coaching buddies and my mastermind buddies and people like you who I can, and they will say, well, that's obviously the truth for them, and this has triggered you, and why has this triggered you, and all of that side. So I'd say for me, it's mainly virtual, but I do still recognise the idea to have the face-to-face. But I think depending on where you are in the world, I mean, geographically, literally where you are in the world, you know, if you're out in the middle of the sticks somewhere, then that's going to be harder. And also whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. How about you?
Well, as you know, I am also an introvert. My life tends to be more kind of online than offline, even in a personal sense. I mean, last year I realized that going into London to meet up with friends was so like tiring and stressful that I even moved a lot of my socializing to Skype. So I just find it so much easier and more relaxing and more enjoyable to Skype with people rather than to actually see them in real life.
Holly, I've got this horrible thought. We're due to meet next week in central London, and
It's going to be so exciting.
no, it's not. It's going to be tiring and stressful for you.
No.
We should have introvert rules for these things. So we'll meet, and then it's okay for us to sit in silence and maybe even sit in different booths in the restaurant for the duration of the meal, and then we can just have a little chat at the end if you want.
We can text each other from afar.
Yes, yeah.
No. I will survive and it will be amazing. But it will be amazing precisely because I don't do that often. I used to go into London all the time for networking stuff and to see people. And I was constantly going into town and I rarely do it anymore. And so that's allowed me to get to the point where when I do actually see a real human being outside of a computer, it's so much more fulfilling and exciting and fun. And it's great because I don't do it that often. Yeah, so I'm definitely, in terms of marketing my business as well, much more of an online person, get clients more from online stuff than from offline stuff. I actually quit regular networking the end of last year. I think December was the last time I went to a business networking meeting offline because I just wasn't getting any clients from it. Whereas I'm getting clients from my YouTube videos, most of which don't even get great views, but people see them and call me. So
I think that is a really, really important point, because finding a way to get that support and, to kind of design your business in a way that is going to maximize your strengths and your style is so important. So I know that for a lot of entrepreneurs, one of the biggest issues is feeling lonely because they work at home all the time. As an introvert, I'm kind of thinking, I love being at home all the time. But then I spend, my business is so much about talking to people, and I make sure that I have that kind of regular daily contact with people via things like Skype. But I know that for some people that wouldn't be enough. They would still find that really isolating. And so I think it's important to recognize your own style and your own needs with this.
Yes, definitely.
Because I'm particularly thinking of somebody who comes to my meetup group who is an absolute extrovert, and she was so excited to be, amongst people. And it was lovely. I guess I'm a little bit like you, is that I love my monthly meetup because it's novel. It's, it's rare. I don't do it every day. I have to say, if people ask me if they want to meet up for coffee and stuff like that, I'm like, why? No. Skype, phone me. Yeah. But I won't have to leave the house. I was putting on makeup and sometimes get dressed. I am usually dressed, by the way, people.
At least from the waist up.
Yeah, exactly. No one can see what goes on behind the desk, stays behind the desk. But yeah, so I think it is important to find your own style on what suits you and your preferences. And what I love now is that there are so many options that are given to us through technology. And through things like social networks, and Skype is amazing.
Yes, I love Skype. It's amazing to think that it's been around for so long.
What, Skype has?
Yeah,
has
it? Been around for years, and I really haven't used it to the extent that I do now. And up until the last few, like 2 or 3 years. Before that, it was like, oh, there's this thing.
Yeah, I guess up until me kind of having my own online business, it was what people who had relatives who lived abroad used.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, now it's just such an integral part of my business. So what are some of the different, is it worth talking about some of the different formats of kind of, or for what of a better word, formats for where to find that kind of support?
Yes, I think that's good because it gives people an idea of what kinds of things they can try out and what kinds of things they haven't experienced yet. So I think one really important thing for people to consider is whether they really like that group interaction or whether that's maybe too much and they want to have kind of more of a one-to-one interaction with people. Because I think they give you different things, but I think most people are going to have a preference towards one or the other. So one-to-one stuff could be like Skype coffees or, hanging out with a business friend online, on Skype or Zoom or whatever it is that you use. Or if you're actually working with someone, coaching or mentoring, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I really, really like just getting together on Skype with a business friend to have a chat.
Yeah, me too. I mean, that was how you and I kind of connected, really, isn't it? And then we just decided to do it as a regular thing, and then we decided to record it, and
Exactly, we decided to make everyone else listen to it as well.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I agree, and I have people that say I'm in mastermind groups with. So, for example, I'm in this mastermind that I think has 50 people in. Now, there's a Facebook group that goes along with that. There was a retreat, but in that retreat, there was no way I had the energy or the time to speak to everybody individually. But what I've managed to do is speak to, a good chunk of those people one-on-one at various times over the past few months via Skype. Because that suits my introvertedness better, and it helps me to really connect. And I also know that some of the people in that group, they have kind of virtual co-working days when they'll just have, I don't know, now I sound really old. Is it like Messenger, MSM or something open? Or they...
I know people that do it on Skype.
Oh, really?
God knows how they get anything done. But yeah, I know people that will get together for like a big group Skype date and get some work done over like a 2-hour chunk.
I would find that. Yeah, I know people who do that. I'm still trying to wrap my head around how that would work, because I just wouldn't talk in the 2 hours. You would just hear me just typing away.
Yeah.
I would only want that if somebody kind of would then be able to just yell at me and kind of go, Joe, we can see you're on Facebook, get off it, get back to what you're meant to be doing. But yeah, so I know people who do that, and if that's something that works for you, then brilliant. There's also kind of co-working spaces, so I know that a lot of my kind of extrovert friends really like going and just hanging out in a co-working space, and they have sections where you work for 50 minutes and then you can have 10 minutes of chat type thing, so people don't get too distracted. So I think there's something so important about having people who are on a similar path, who get it, who get what it is, this weird thing that we do, which is having an online business. And there was some people in the group this morning who were kind of nodding as I was saying, why this is so important. And one lady was sharing how her mum still says, well, when you get yourself a proper job, and you just really just doesn't get what it is that she does, despite the fact that she makes way more money than she ever did in a proper job.
Oh my.
And and other people who, if your WordPress website crashes or you've been hacked or you get a client it doesn't go so well or something like that, if somebody works in a shop or they work in an ordinary office, they just aren't going to get why you feel so disappointed or frustrated or excited or whatever it might be. And I think that it's really important to have people that you can share the experience with, understand the context and can understand that experience.
Yeah, definitely. Because it gives you so much more kind of emotional and mental support. And it just helps you when you're kind of going through those down times. Because obviously, despite what we see on Facebook, everything isn't peachy and fabulous.
No, it's not. And it's actually, that's one of the things that is so valuable about being able to talk to people face to face, whether that be on Skype or, meet up with them, is to sometimes to see more of the reality of what goes on. Like I can remember one of the kind of most impactful conversations I had with somebody was with somebody who was, I thought, a hugely successful coach. I mean, still is a hugely successful coach, but I assumed was making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And not only did she tell me that she had only just hit 6 figures and she'd been going for, I think, 7 years, but that her first group program had flopped. And she was now running really successful group programs, and now they sold out. But the fact that she was willing to share with me, and it was just anecdotally, it wasn't, I'm going to give you a piece of advice from the wise woman. It was just really anecdotally that the first time that she ran, she didn't have things in place. She didn't have the messaging right. And I said, so what did you do? And she said, well, I went back to people and I said, I'm really sorry, we can't run it in this format. And, you feel embarrassed and you move on, you learn from it. And so when I then launched my first group program, and it also flopped, and I think I had 2 people sign up for it, I went back to those people and said, I'm really sorry, I think there's something wrong with the timing. would you still like to work with me on this program for the same price, one-to-one? And both of them jumped at it, thought it was fantastic, thought they were getting really great value because, you know, compared to my one-to-one prices, they were. But I think I would have probably just fallen into a heap of, I'm such a huge failure, had I not known that that's actually quite common for your first, you know, or even your second or your third endeavour to not go as well as you would want it. And that's actually part of the process. Nobody comes out of this just kind of fully formed, ding, and you know, you have to be able to make mistakes and try things. And that is one of the things that I suppose naturally isn't seen so much on Facebook, because people are marketing a lot and you don't see that behind the scenes stuff. And people are more likely to be able to share that type of thing when you're having a conversation with them. I now a lot more comfortable sharing my experience of, you know, my first group program that flopped, because I know how important it was for me to hear that from somebody further along the line. So I think that kind of dose of reality. Yes, we could talk about, you know, the fact that I want to be able to see more possibilities for myself and really believe it, but also on the other side to have that dose of reality that, you know, part of the process is that you will fail, and that's okay. You pick yourself up and you keep on going, because that's the only way that it happens. That is also really helpful, because otherwise if you think everyone else is doing so much better than I am, then that's also a toxic belief that just really isn't going to help you.
Yeah, and constantly comparing yourself to other people as well is just self-defeating.
Yeah. And one of the things that is really good, just having buddies who are in a similar position, is you get different brains on a problem. You know, so if you've got a challenge about, well, how to fill a program, or I don't know, maybe you're having a tricky issue with a client or something, so long as you're, you know, being ethical about it and you're anonymizing, you're not kind of, you know, giving the name and stuff like that. If you're using it appropriately, it can be great, because other people have different perspectives and they can help you to see outside those self-imposed limits and blocks that you're putting on yourself, and come up with different solutions that you may never have thought of.
Yeah. Now, that brings me to another thought, is oftentimes in these groups, people will kind of start out at the same level. Some people will grow really fast. Some people will just kind of stay stagnant. Some people will grow slowly. So how do you know when you've outgrown your network or business friends or a group of people?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think, well, for me, I'm an INFP, so for me, it's a very intuitive gut feeling rather than a kind of a logical, let me kind of work through. So for me, it's a gut thing, and it's an inkling, like I feel kind of dragged down when I'm talking to these people, or I feel like we're limiting ourselves here, or I want to kind of break out of this and see what other possibilities that there are there. I'm not a fan of so you know that, is it the Jim Rohn quote, you are the total of the 5 people you spend the most time with? I can appreciate where that's coming from, but I think for some people that goes to oh, you don't associate with losers. And it's like, well, actually, I don't think anyone's a loser, and there's a lot, you know. So I have friends who don't make tons of money and haven't got online businesses and have no interest in any of that, and yet they have huge amounts of influence on me because I love them and they make me laugh like crazy. So, you know, so it's not all about, do you know what I mean when I'm saying that? So I do see some people when they get into personal development and they see something like that quote and they kind of, well, I'm ditching all of my other friends and my family and I'm just going to go to big conferences because I want to just mix with people who are making multiple 6 figures. And I kind of think, well, you're kind of limiting yourself on things like that. Yeah. But if I find that I am struggling with a particular issue and I am just seeing that kind of mirrored back to me, so other people around me are also struggling with the same issue, that's quite often a kind of a prompt for me to think, okay, I need a different perspective on this. That's not to say I ditch all those people, but it might be, okay, so if I'm in a group, say, with people who are kind of going, oh, the online model just doesn't work anymore. It's like, well, actually, I want to be looking at people of, that doesn't make sense to me. Of course it is, but it's going to be shifting. So who is it at the moment that is really doing well? And let me see if I can kind of learn from them.
Yes, I absolutely agree. Whenever I hear people say that X, Y, or Z doesn't work anymore, it's like, okay, I get that it's working differently, but like, I don't want to be exposed to that kind of idea.
Yeah. Because that's a really good way of keeping yourself limited and yes, safe, because You know, oh, well, it doesn't work anymore, then you can kind of just give up on this now.
Yes.
Whereas it's never that simple. Yes, of course it changes over time and you need to keep relatively up to date on it. But yeah, those kind of limiting beliefs don't help. And I also think it's really important that we can model for each other. So what I love if one of my kind of peer group suddenly gets a huge amount of success. So, you know, so over the years, I've seen some people who've just risen faster than others.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I find that really inspirational because it kind of says it's possible for you. And I know you and I have talked about this because you have a friend who hit 6 figures really quickly.
Yes.
And you looked at how she did it and kind of thought, I can see how she's done it, but that's not for me.
Yeah. Well, except unfortunately, before I realized that's not for me, I tried to kind of follow that and then realized that wasn't my path.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Go ahead. I think is a great learning experience because I think so many of the big coaches say, this is the blueprint, follow this and it'll work. And while, yes, it worked for them, that doesn't mean it's going to work for everyone. And so it's such an easy trap to get into because you see someone else's formula and you think, oh, I'll just follow that. But it's not your formula.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like follow exactly my blueprint. And then people are kind of going, well, it's not working for me, but you haven't got the same personality. You haven't got the same skill set. Yeah. You know, maybe you're not naturally enjoying this as much as maybe they did. But you know what? I bet if we tweaked that and you did kind of step more into those places which are your zone of genius, then that's, you know, we could maybe tweak it and then it would work for you. And I think you need other people around, you need a variety of people around you giving you kind of that encouragement, but also that kind of those different models to follow, because otherwise you can get very tunnel visioned about this is the only way, so why is it not working for me?
Yes, and it's so frustrating. I mean, it really takes trial and error for most people. I was just interviewing Denise Duffield-Thomas for my podcast again the other night, and I said to her, how did you find your formula? Because she's got a very clear formula. She does very limited things. She's not all over the place. She has, you know, her particular ways of creating content, her particular ways of marketing her product, and she has one product. And she said, you know, it's trial and error. I just tried a bunch of things before I figured out what worked for me, and then I just stuck to it. So, you know, that's really all you can do is just experiment until you find what works for you.
Yeah, and don't give up the first time that you try something and it doesn't work. It's like, well, sometimes it's the third or fourth attempt, or sometimes it needs a tweak, or sometimes it's something different, but I know that this kind of becomes a bit of a cliche, but it really is persistence with a lot of this stuff. You know, I look back at the people who did coach training with me, and I think there, as far as I know from our kind of class that year that did it, 2 of us are still coaches. Now you know, it's a fair few years ago that I did it, but I know that for others, they maybe just quit that bit too soon. And that's kind of a shame because I think that people do get put here to be doing certain things, and you know, if it's lighting you up and you're drawn to be doing it, then one of my whys is helping people to do that. But I think we need various voices, particularly for women, I think, saying you can totally do this. Let's look at different ways that you could do it. It's okay to feel crap sometimes. Keep going. And if you have enough people, whether that's people you just follow online or that's people that you talk to on Skype or the phone every day, if you have enough voices that are saying, keep going.
Yes.
Then that is going to kind of counterbalance that voice in your head that's going, give up, it's not going to work. Because that's the hardest thing. And I think that's what having the right people around you does for you. Yeah. It's kind of, it's most basic.
Yeah, exactly. It's surrounding yourself with people who support you rather than the people who are, saying you can't do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Or it's too hard or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that just helps keep your mindset where it needs to be. Because like you said, so many people give up. And it's so hard to know, how long it would have taken those people to make it. But it's like, in some cases, maybe it just would have been, a few more months or a couple months and they would have cracked the code. And so it's rough.
Yeah,
you really got to stick with it. You've really got to have a lot of patience and perseverance.
Yeah, for sure. And so having somebody there saying, oh, I know how that feels. That absolutely sucks. So what can you do next time? You know, sometimes having that, or somebody just to kind of go, yeah, that sucks. I know how that feels. And having somebody who kind of gets it, is able to give you that space to, you know, have a cry, to feel disappointed, and then to support you to kind of get back on the metaphorical horse. That's so valuable.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Definitely.
So you don't do in-person networking?
No, I haven't. This entire year, I have not done in-person networking.
I don't really myself. I mean, I do it a little bit because I have
You've got a meetup group.
I know, but that's mine. That's my group, and I don't have to do any small talk in it. That's one of the things I love, because, you know, as an introvert, we hate small talk. But I know other people who love in-person networking. Mm-hmm. So what kind of other online stuff do you do? So you love Skype dates.
Love Skype dates. So I love Facebook groups, and I finally started my own Facebook group this year.
Yay!
Yay! After so many months of resisting it.
I didn't know that. Am I in your Facebook group?
No, I don't think so.
Why aren't I? I'm kind of a little bit offended, I have to admit. I'm not really. I know. Oh, no, I didn't know that. That's awesome. So Facebook groups.
I did a very soft launch of it in August, because I knew I was going away, because I walked the Ridgeway, I walked the Downslink, and so I knew I was going to be away. So I didn't want to get like a bunch of people in the group and then be like, ooh, I disappear. So I did a very, very soft launch, and then it's taken my brain a while to get back in gear after August. So I kind of mentioned it to my list and that kind of thing, and every time I mention it, more people come in. It's a nice small group, and it's pretty active, and I'm really happy with it. But I haven't like really put it out there in a big way, because I feel like my brain is just barely getting back on track. So
No, it's okay. I forgive you. It's all right. I also have a Facebook group, and I have to say I love it, and I find it, I don't know about you, again, it's the introvert thing, but I find it easier in groups that are slightly smaller.
Yes.
Then, you know, the ones that have like 12,000 people in, all I can see is noise when I kind of look. I struggle with those some more. So I like them who, you know, if they're around about 2,000 people maximum, then that tends to be a nice number. Mine is, at the moment, is around 500 people, and I have to say I am really kind of strict as to who's allowed in, and you have to.
Really interesting.
Well, only because I wanted this really. It's called the Coaches Collective, and I really like this idea of it. It's a collective. It's there for people to be supporting each other, and so if you are trying to sell your cheap Ray-Ban sunglasses, then that really isn't in the ethos of the collective for coaches. Or if you're selling your latest, I don't know, group program and things, again, it's just really easy for a group to become very, very noisy. So I have a really strict no promo policy. There's like one thread on a Sunday that people can share stuff, but I love the space that gives for relationships to flourish. So we've got people who have there's a TLC thread that we have, which stands for tweet, link and comment.
Oh, I like that.
So people, you know, are supporting each other's kind of blog posts and things like that. So that, you know, there's some real mutual support and encouragement going on, and giving each other feedback. We've had people who, you know, have collaborated on projects. There's always a thread where people can ask for help, or to give some, you know, pearls of wisdom that they've discovered, or some kind of breakthroughs and things like that. And so that's why I'm kind of strict about who can
yeah, that makes sense.
Who can be in there.
So about your meetup group, how has that been? Because I have been wanting to create my own meetup group for years, but every time I've organized kind of offline meetups, it's so tiring and stressful. People cancel at the last minute, they drop out, they don't show up, and it just irritates the crap out of me, because people are so sloppy and just, So anyway, so I dream of having a meetup group, but also I have all these kind of icky memories of having organized stuff in the past. So how is it working for you, and how do you avoid that ickiness?
For me, it works really well, because I said this right up front to the group this morning, because we had quite a few new people in the group. I said, you know, it's called the Collective. It's called the Manchester Coaches Collective, and I also have one in London. And So it's very much collectivism. It's people to be able to learn from each other and support each other. But because I'm an introvert, I freak out at the thought of small talk. So it gives me a good kind of opportunity and license to say, I'm going to spend an hour or an hour and a half of the session with a taught input. Because it gives me a chance to kind of step into a bit of my zone of genius, which is, being able to teach people some strategies and some skills, but it also gives a focus to the session. So I set it up through a meetup, and meetup is great because you choose the keywords for your group. So for me, it's things like personal development, coaching, business coaching, entrepreneurism, women in business, a whole variety. And what meetup does is kind of promotes your group to people who have kind of flagged that they have an interest in those subjects. So it can grow organically, but relatively quickly. So within a few weeks of it being set up, I had like 50, 60 members online. And then you can message those people. So I did a bit of kind of discussion and messaging people online about what they wanted. Then I found a venue, arranged for the first session, and then I charge a nominal fee for it and sell tickets through Eventbrite.
Oh, you don't sell through Meetup?
No, I sell through Eventbrite because it's just easier to manage. And, just for various ways. It's a little bit of a pain because it is a two-part process, but kind of my coach assured me this was the most efficient way to do it. And I have to say, I really like the way that it works, because Eventbrite will also then promote your event.
Oh, yeah.
So I charge a nominal amount. So it's £10 early bird or £15 for the whole event as it stands at the moment. And that simply covers the venue price so that I'm not out of pocket for hiring the venue. But the other good thing is that it gives people more of an incentive to show up.
Yes.
So they're a lot more likely to show up if they've paid £10 than if they haven't.
Yeah.
They feel a bit busy. So I have to say that I really don't have a lot of attrition, a lot of kind of drop off. I do promotion in terms of, share it with my Facebook group, share it with my list. I ask friends to share it. But again, because I'm an introvert, I don't care about having, 50 or 60 people there. I quite like, 10 is a really nice number. And, you can get a lot done. So, we tend to hover between kind of 10, 15 people for most sessions.
Oh, nice.
With, changing kind of faces and some people who kind of consistently come each month. And it works really well. It's really nice. I really enjoy it. And the people seem to get a lot out of it. And so, yeah.
Oh, good. And so is it morning, afternoon, evening?
I do it mornings because I have a 6-year-old and a husband who works late. So a lot of the evening events don't work for me. But also that works pretty well for a lot of my ideal clients because they will also tend to be mums or tend to be people who are already working for themselves. I do have people who still have a day job and they will come less often, but I've regularly had people take a day off work to come. So yeah, so it's nice. And so I kind of set the intention that this was going to be an enjoyable experience and not hassly and stressful.
Good. And it sounds like it's working.
Yeah, I do. I really enjoy it. But it is, and the people who come really enjoy it as well and get a lot out of it. But I think it's also about doing it around your zone of genius. So for me, I love teaching people. I love being stood at the front, being able to share information and answer questions and things like that. But if we'd said, let's just meet up and network and chat, I'd be like, what do I talk about? Because that's introvert hell.
I think there's so many groups that are like that.
Yeah.
They all have little different formats, but there are so many groups like that. And so I think that's really interesting to have a group that's kind of focused around one person always doing the presentation, because there's continuity, what to expect, and you get a chance to go deeper into that topic.
Yeah. And we also have sections where, so maybe somebody's a particular expert in a particular tool or they've got some expertise in one area. So, well, there's space for people to kind of say, I would love to be able to talk about this for 15 minutes. And so it's this idea that, is the collective. So if people kind of say, yeah, I'd really like to learn about that, then we have space for that too. But I think with the ones that are more kind of just networking, what tends to happen is the more dominant personalities just tend to dominate the group. And so my meetup may be a bit frustrating for those types of people because I'm dominating it, I guess, because, I'm the leader. This is my group. This is my kind of start. And, it's time to ask me questions. So it's horses for courses and all of that. It works well for me. It works well for my people. But, if you're an extrovert who just loves talking to people for 3 hours, you may find it a little bit frustrating because, But I think that's important. It has to be that finding a way that it works for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Excellent. So I think we've probably given people some really good examples, a variety of examples of ways that they can think bigger and surround themselves with the right people, whether it's online, offline, one-to-one, groups, so many options out there. And I think the trick is, as we've said, try them out, see what works for you, see what you enjoy the most, see what's most useful to you, what's most supportive to you, and stick with that.
Yeah. Is it worth just spending a couple of minutes I know we're doing a bit of a longer session today, but is it worth just kind of giving some people some tips as to where to find their support networks?
Yeah, definitely.
I'm talking over you again. We'll edit that.
So meetup.com is fantastic if you're looking for offline stuff. Eventbrite is also good. And here in the UK, there's a ton of networking groups.
Yeah.
I'm sure in other parts of the world there are too, but like here, there seems to be like an abnormal amount of women's networking groups in particular. Like I've not even seen this level of women's networking in other countries. So there's all that kind of stuff. Where else do you look for things?
Well, I think online, Facebook is just the bomb when it comes to this type of stuff now. I know that, if your business has more of a business corporate focus, then LinkedIn groups can work really well. But in terms of making those really personal connections, being able to just very quickly find people who are in a similar industry or have similar interests, then doing a Facebook group search is brilliant.
Yes.
Also, think about who do you love already who has an online business. Find their page, see if they have a Facebook group that's associated with it. So, like Denise Duffield Thomas or I think Rebecca Tracy or, one of those people. Very often people will have their own Facebook group. Sometimes they're associated with a course that maybe they have, but more and more I think people have their own kind of free Facebook group that, so that you can become part of their community and start commenting, start asking questions. And then once you've kind of built up a little bit of a rapport with people, then maybe just, does anybody fancy just hopping onto Skype? Or, if you've been chatting with somebody in a group, then maybe send them a direct message and suggest that, you take it onto Skype or something like that. So I think Facebook is just so packed full of great groups. And if you're a coach, then by all means come along and join the Coaches Collective. And I'd be more than happy if you wanted to just ask a question in there about, okay, so what are some great other groups to be part of? So rather than you just keeping yourself to one, because there are some great ones out there. And I think it's about finding ones that kind of, suit your style and suit the kind of the information and the interaction that you're wanting. How about you?
Yeah, definitely. I kind of go on and off with Facebook groups. Like there's some that I'm really active in and then I'll kind of forget about them for a while. But I think definitely it's a matter of trying out the Facebook groups, seeing what works for you, seeing what doesn't, and don't feel like you have to stick it out if you feel like it's not the right place for you. That's the most important thing. Just move on and find something else.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This has been a really good topic of conversation. It's one of those that I kind of think at the beginning, I kind of thought, I'm not sure I have a lot to say about this. And it turns out, as usual, I do.
And as we said in the start, I think it's very complimentary to our previous episode.
Yes.
So if anyone hasn't listened to our previous episode on coaching, mentoring, masterminding, you might want to go and check that out now because it's a great combination.
Definitely. Yeah, because, they are all also really good ways of getting that support, but in a more kind of formalized setting usually. So I guess what we're talking about this week is kind of the less formal aspects of it that kind of go alongside that. But yeah, really, really important. And I honestly don't know how people built businesses or how people do build businesses if they don't have that kind of support network. It must be so, so difficult to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I was just going to say, I can't even imagine what kind of person would get themselves into that situation considering all of the resources that are out there.
Yeah.
I guess if you're really new to something, you just have no clue that there's this whole community out there. But I feel bad for them.
I know. And, it's an international community now, which is just mind-blowing.
Yes.
It blows my mind. So yeah, go check out those things. So we will put links to certainly my Facebook group. We're going to put a link to your Facebook group?
Yes, we will.
Okay, link to your Facebook group, Holly, as well.
Accepting people, so...
Glad to hear it. And things like Meetup, Eventbrite, and maybe some of the kind of the bigger Facebook groups that maybe people should check out?
Link to the ones kind of our favorite Facebook groups.
Yeah. We'll kind of pop those in the show notes as well.
Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I hope this was useful to everyone.
Yeah, me too. Speak to you soon.
Okay, bye. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope it was super, super useful. Now, remember to visit hollywharton.com/168 for the show notes on this episode. As I mentioned, we're going to have tons of really useful links in there, including our Facebook groups, other Facebook groups that we like, and stuff that we spoke about during the episode. So thank you very, very much, and have a great day.
Thanks so much for listening to the Business Mindset Podcast with your host, Holly Wharton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed at hollywharton.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, please remember to head over to iTunes and leave a quick review of this podcast. It just takes a minute. Thank you.